Welcome back. Today I want to talk to you a little bit about the resale industry because it's gone from just being about thrifting and consignment to being its own $200 billion business. And for a long time, it was treated like a side hustle or a pastime activity. But thanks to better technology and consumer preference, resale has become its own profit pool in the fashion industry. Depending on which report that you're looking at, the global secondhand market is already a $200 million market, and it is set to grow to over $300 billion by 2029. That the resale market is growing faster than the traditional apparel market. Now, we'll definitely get into all of the whys, but there are some things this video is going to cover. First, we're going to cover how big the industry actually is. Second, we're going to understand why it's booming right now. And third, the part that most people don't see, the technology infrastructure that is quietly changing the resale game. My name is Jessica Couch. I'm a fashion and technology expert, and I go to conferences and do research so that you don't have to. And Fashion Technology 101 is just booming with information around what's the latest and greatest in our industry. Way back when I was first starting out in wholesale retail with Luxury and Finch as a store, my colleague had a resale and consignment store, a thrift store called Mila and Fire, and it was dope and it did numbers, and they did an incredible job of picking the best pieces for resale. And now when I think about it, this is a $200 billion industry, so it goes to show they were ahead of the game. Because resale is no longer just a marketplace and it is a full technology stack with logistics and financial tools that reshapes how fashion circulates, I feel like it's worthy for us to talk about and do a video on. Because if you want fashion retailer technology, understanding this stack is going to become increasingly important. So first, let's discuss how big is resale really? And let's start with the numbers. Men may lie, but numbers don't. And we need to understand if this is a niche trend or not. Now, the global secondhand apparel market is estimated to have reached around $270 billion in 2024. And forecasts suggest that it could grow to roughly $367 billion by 2029. This means resale is growing about 2 to 3 times faster than the rest of the apparel industry. To put this in perspective, if traditional retail is jogging, resale is sprinting. In fact, resale is already becoming a meaningful percentage of the global consumption. And is doing so while the broader fashion industry is experiencing slower growth. When we say resale is booming, we're not talking about a niche category. We're actually talking about a structural shift in how fashion is bought, valued, and then circulated. We knew for a while that clothing is not going to just be something that you buy and own. For various reasons, clothing is something that you want to wear, resell, and circulate through multiple owners. Now, when I was working at Nordstrom, people basically used Nordstrom as their own rental service. They would buy some items, we knew they would wear it, they would bring it back and return it. And at that time, the return policies were so lenient, it was a thing. And although Nordstrom tried to stop it, this was an indication that consumer behaviors had shifted and retail needed to catch up. If that shift of buy and return was an indication of how shoppers behaviors were changing, then resale is an indication that things absolutely are changing and may never go back to being the same. Resale is also an indication that consumer behavior has shifted around how they want to shop, which also changes how brands want to design products. And lastly, it changes how investors can actually evaluate fashion businesses. Now that we have an understanding of the resale industry, we really need to understand why is resale booming and why is it happening now? You can really break it down to 3 forces in the industry that form the perfect trifecta for this industry to boom. First, it's money, then it's meaning, and then it's machinery. So let's talk about money first. Clothing has become noticeably more expensive, but quality has not gone up. So between inflation, supply chain shocks, and tariffs, I think that many consumers are paying more for apparel than they were just a few years ago, but they're also noticing that everything is probably too similar to fast fashion to really justify the price increases. At the same time, we're looking at the economic situation of most people, and wages haven't really necessarily kept up with the pace. And this happens in this type of economy. But resale has become the pressure valve. See, it allows consumers to stretch their budgets while still participating in fashion, but it also lowers the risk. And for many younger shoppers, we already know that resale is not about being cheap, but Gen Z has adopted resale as just a more strategic method of buying clothing. They can buy better brands for the same budget, or they can buy something knowing that they'll be able to resell it later and cover the part of the cost. So now we're seeing a whole new level of hustling emerge in the fashion industry that's not just for retailers, but it's for individuals. Now, the second force is meaning. We've been saying for a while that people need to be a bit more sustainable, but we're seeing that it's moving away from marketing language alone into everyday behavior. So customers are increasingly aware of the environmental impact of fashion. They're aware of how fast fashion has definitely changed how we consume, and resale seems to be one of the most tangible ways to extend the life of garments. Consumers can feel way better about their purchases, but for brands, resale actually offers something important. It provides a versatile path towards circular fashion without completely rebuilding their supply chains overnight, which caused a lot of friction when we first began to demand more sustainability. So launching a resale or a take-back program is far easier than redesigning an entire manufacturing system. So retail essentially becomes a meeting point between values and practicality. Because it works so well for the brands now, we know that brands can embrace it while consumers get affordability and uniqueness. Brands get to tap into the sustainability narrative and new revenue from the same products. So if you can sell those products multiple times, make money off of it, you're in a good place. So the third force is going to be machinery, and this is where the fashion technology piece is really important. So behind the scenes, the infrastructure for resale has matured dramatically. Today, we have AI tools that can generate product listings and pricing suggestions from just a photo. And there's enough data for this to be accurate, because one of the biggest reasons I'm kind of iffy about resale really is around authentication and pricing. Logistic networks now handle authentication and refurbishment in a way that they hadn't been able to do so. And resale-as-a-service platforms that plug directly into a brand's e-commerce stack are becoming ever more prevalent and easier to use. So the machinery that transforms resale from a messy manual process into something that can scale globally exists now and is being put to good use. Previously, when I had a store, I had a lot of dead inventory, and I would have liked to partner with resale platforms. And for the most part, I would find different thrifters and offer them the products. But of course, if you limit resale to thrifting, then you know that people are looking for things that may be a bit more vintage or something else. So I think that these platforms can be utilized in very clever ways for today's brands and retailers in a way that I didn't have access to more than 10 years ago. The fact that there's so much technology now to scale resale businesses is just amazing. But I think it's so important to know what the retail stack is so that you can understand as a brand or as a consumer exactly what exists. So to understand what's happening and the shifts that are taking place, it's better to think of resale as a technology stack. So just like e-commerce has layers, it has storefronts, it has payments, logistics, all of those things, resale's developing its own infrastructure layers as well. I'm going to try to make this simple for you, but let's just get into it. At the top of the stack is the consumer-facing discovery layer. These are the platforms most people recognize. Companies like ThredUp, Vestiaire, Collective, and newer apps like Vent. ThredUp started as an online consignment marketplace. You could send your items and clothes in. They handled the sorting, they handled photography and pricing and listing. And of course, you would wait until your product sold to then get paid. But today, a large part of ThredUp's business has actually shifted, and they're actually selling that infrastructure back to the brands. Vestiaire Collective operates in luxury resale. So a customer might buy a designer bag, enjoy it for a few years, and then list it on Vestiaire. This platform then authenticates the item. It uses historical transaction data to optimize price and exposes it to exposes the product to a global audience of buyers. Platforms like Vent take a slightly different angle. They're focusing on making everyday resale easier through mobile-first experiences. You can consider these platforms the front end of resale, so consumer-facing, making things easier and automating the process of consignment. But behind them are an entire ecosystem of infrastructure companies. So for example, Trove powers many brand-owned resale programs. Patagonia has a famous worn wear platform that runs on Trove's infrastructure and on their technology. Customers see the Patagonia experience, but Trove actually handles the intake, the refurbishment, the pricing, and resale operations, which is great because a lot of retailers and brands aren't really set up to do this, and having to white label this could be cumbersome. Then you have companies like Circular Resale. Now, Circular Resale functions almost like an operation system for consignment and thrift stores. So they work slightly different. Staff actually intake a garment, they photograph it, and they let the software suggest the pricing and automatically create a product listing synced to Shopify or to whatever point of sale system that a brand is using. When an item sells, the platform calculates the payout to the original consignment automatically. So this is helpful because it replaces things like spreadsheets and manual tracking with a real software backbone. Another fascinating player in this space is Threadline. Threadline pushes resale even earlier in the product life cycle. I like this one because it's super forward thinking and it actually incorporates digital IDs. So brands can embed the digital IDs, often a QR code, directly into garments. Years later, a customer can scan that tag and instantly generate a resale listing with all the product information already filled in. Now, this is important for traceability, and we know that we have a lot of fakes and issues with products, who bought them when and where. So in some cases, the brands can even earn a percentage of that resale transaction, even years later. That introduces something incredibly important, because for brands to truly benefit from resale, they need visibility into what happens to products after the first sale. Traceability allows brands to track how long garments stay in someone's closet in their possession, how long they stay in circulation, and then when they resell, what their value is, which could be really important for brands with their pricing strategy and even their production strategy. This kind of data can eventually influence how brands design products in that space altogether. Then there are companies like Super Circle. Super Circle manages the reverse logistics for circularity programs. So if a retailer runs a take back campaign, for example, collecting used denim, Super Circle determines which garments should be resold, downcycled, or recycled into new fibers. It also generates reporting on material flows and emission reductions. Now, this is super important because if you watch my video about what went on in Ghana, then you'll understand the importance of having this type of technology when we're thinking about resale markets and the life cycle of a product. And then finally, we have adjacent players that sit around the edges of resale. So companies like Extend and Croissant are very unique. Extend offers product protection and repair. If an item breaks, it can be repaired rather than discarded, and it remains usable longer and contains some resale value. And this is important. If you've ever worked in retail, you've noticed people might try stuff on and buttons pop, things happen, but this helps to extend the life cycle of that product versus just getting rid of it. Croissant, however, is where resale meets fintech. So it allows retailers to show a guaranteed buyback value for certain products at checkout. So in other words, you might buy a handbag for $2,000, knowing that your platform will buy it back from you for $1,000 within a year. So that turns fashion purchases into something close to assets with future value. Now, this could be great because we all know that some people buy for things to last and maybe you want to hand it down to someone. And some people buy off impulse, or maybe you're just buying because you needed something in the moment. But if you put all of these technology and layers together, you start seeing an emerging retail stack. You have customer marketplaces, you have brand-owned resale programs, infrastructure for pricing, logistics, and digital product IDs, and even financial tools that connect original purchase price to resale value immediately. This could also help people want to buy more if they knew the value of it and knew that it could be resold. Now, these are not by far the only companies in this space, but these were some of the companies that I did a little research on and figured it would be great to share. Now let's move on from the actual stack and talk about why resale is a discovery engine. Here's the part that I think is the most underrated. Resale isn't just about a secondary market. Resale is actually becoming one of fashion's most powerful discovery engines. Now, if you pay attention to my videos, I talk ad nauseum about how fashion discovery and the process is outdated, and there has to be a bridge that connects people to product. For younger shoppers especially, inspiration increasingly starts in the resale platforms. Instead of browsing through a retailer's single brand's new arrivals, they actually scroll through mixed feeds of brand seasons, aesthetics, and price points. The question actually shifts from what's new from this brand to what exists that fits my style and my budget. And if you've ever browsed resale platforms, this is the natural behavior that you have when trying to figure out what's going to be best from you. You're really searching by your vibe. You might have something in mind, a brand in mind, by a micro trend, or even a keyword. But when you're going on a resale platform, you're definitely hyper motivated to get something knowing that it is going to come at a discount. Resale also creates something that fashion has historically lacked, which is price transparency. Because resale platforms sit on millions of transactions, they provide real insights into which brands actually hold value over time and which do not. So while luxury products are constantly increasing in their costs, people can actually learn whether or not they're increasing in their value. Customers begin to notice these patterns, and some brands maintain strong resale value while others lose their value immediately. It's much like luxury cars. Obviously, once you drive it off the lot, it's going to lose about a third of its value if it's brand new. But there are some cars you can always resell and get your money, and some you can't. But that information definitely influences future buying. So when tools start showing resale value at checkout, the meaning of price changes completely. So it's no longer just the sticker price. What is the lifelong price of this product? Does it create value? Now, we haven't even gotten into the type of technology where you could literally go through your closet, upload the items that you have, and if they are high value, they can go towards your assets, which is great for the girlies who really love their bags and shoes and maybe feel like we don't always get their assets and value off of it. And it's great for bargaining when people are like, why should I buy you this bag? And it's like, what do you mean? It's an asset that will increase in value at a certain rate, and now you can prove it. Now, we'll talk about that technology later, but I want you to see how all of these things feed into the monetization of your wardrobe and your shopping behaviors. Don't ever let anybody tell you that shopping is a waste of time and that your taste has no value. That is an absolute lie. So let's get back focused. For brands, resale creates a completely new source of consumer insights. So brands can see which items are valued the most, traded the most, and bought the most frequently. Brands can also see how long products stay in circulation, which I think is a very important metric for brands to understand. They'll know which resale buyers eventually become first-time customers, and then resale then becomes a map of a circular customer journey. This is the type of data that we have to constantly collect in fashion in order to make it smarter. And it's incredibly valuable to have it. So brands can design products with durability and resale value in mind. And they can create loyalty programs around trade and behavior. Then they can generate revenue from the same product multiple times through the product's life cycle, which to me is top tier. So to recap, resale has certainly evolved from just thrifting and estate sales and peer-to-peer listings into an actual global infrastructure partnered industry worth hundreds of billions of dollars that's set to only grow over the next 5 years. And it's obvious that resale is growing because it solves multiple problems at once. It makes fashion more affordable in a high price environment. It gives brands a credible path towards circularity without all the bullshit and greenwashing. And it rides on a technology stack that makes secondhand commerce easier than ever for the consumers and for the brands. But maybe most importantly, resale is actually changing how we discover fashion. And this is a behavior that should be studied and paid attention to. The secondhand feed is becoming a search engine for personal style, price truth, and product longevity. So if you're building in fashion technology, investing in the space, or leading a brand strategy team, the question is no longer whether resale matters. The real question is, where in the resale stack do you want to play? Because we're only at the beginning of fashion's circular infrastructure decade. I thought this information would be interesting, and I hope you do too, whether you're a brand or you're a consumer. Resale is something to pay attention to, and it's also something to prepare for, because your products and your brand is important. Traceability is important, and the value that your products have are important. And from the consumption side, your money is important. So it's great to have the opportunity when you buy something and you love it, to have the opportunity to resell it, to create value for yourself, and to participate in circularity without just throwing yourself into the goodwill and wondering what happens next. So if you enjoyed this, definitely like and subscribe. Make sure you follow the Fashion Technology 101 newsletters on Substack. There's a Fashion Technology 101 newsletter on LinkedIn. You can follow my Instagram at _JessicaVeronica_ or at Luxer and Finch. And of course, go to luxerandfinch.com if you're a tech company and you want to be in our fashion technology directory. This directory is so important because it's not just a way to scroll and find technology. You can actually talk to the directory's interface as a company who needs technology, and it will help to match you and give you its best effort so that you're not just Googling it. And